Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to Nightcap with Neoliberal Tears. It is I, Neoliberal Tears, and today I wanted to talk about litmus tests. There's a little bit of a kerfuffle, brouhaha, if you will, happening online over um, Hassan Piker, but more broadly speaking, and more importantly, whether people or leftists should support Democrats without litmus tests, or what the litmus test should be. I've been very upfront about my own bias, which is that I do have a litmus test, and it is Zionism. Anyone who's a Zionist in any shape or form, even the liberal faction of Zionism, doesn't get my vote, right? And I think what I've been noticing from some of the backlash that Hassan was getting for endorsing certain Democratic candidates who are Zionists and running within the Democratic Party is that a lot of people feel like they have moved beyond what candidates are offering them in terms of Zionism. And I think it points more broadly to a gulf that exists between what democratic strategists, not that Hassan is a democratic strategist in any way, but I believe that there is a gulf between what democratic operatives believe it would take for pro-Palestine voters to come back into the Democratic Party tent and vote for people. They think if candidates just say the word genocide while supporting a two-state delusion, that would be enough to persuade disaffected voters who care about Palestine to vote Democrat again. And I think where a lot of people are, as we're going to see, is they have a litmus test, and like me, that their litmus test is Zionism. So let's review it over. This is not a call out, by the way, it's a call in, because I think it should be the litmus test for everybody. Like, we should hold candidates to the standard of being anti-Zionist, endorsing the one-state solution, which is the only anti-Zionist solution, right? And join Rashida Tlaib, Congressmember Tlaib, in endorsing the one-state solution so that she's less lonely and in Congress. So let's see what happened. So Hassan Piker, very famous, successful Twitch streamer, thought leader on the political left. He had on a candidate for, I believe, the mayoral race in Los Angeles. And he asked her whether apartheid in West Asia has a right to exist. So let's see how she answered this question. Oh, sorry, that's a different clip that played. By my apologies. Here we go. Let's play this one.
He's doing studies of the Armenian genocide with the intention of criminalizing it and preventing the ongoing Holocaust from ever happening again. Do you agree?
I'll rewind it.
He's doing studies of the Armenian genocide with the intention of criminalizing it and preventing the ongoing Holocaust from ever happening again. Do you agree with the dozens of human rights organizations, including Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, that Israel has committed a genocide?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Said that.
In your 2020 DFI-LA questionnaire, you said you don't support boycott, divestments, and sanctions, BDS, and that you support Israel's right to exist. Has your stance changed since then? And do you believe Israel has a right to exist in its current form as an ethno-state that's currently being investigated for genocide at the International Court of Justice?
You know, yes, I do believe that Israel has a right to exist. I want to see countries that are operating without apartheid, with equality in their borders. I come from a country, from India, which is...
Sorry, just to stop right there. You can't have it both ways, right? You can't say ethno-nationalism and apartheid have a right to exist, which is what a Jewish state by default is, right? It by definition discriminates against people of any other religion or no religion. So you can't say you support equality, but then you also support ethno-nationalism's right to exist, right? That's why people were not having it, and rightly so, because you can't claim to support equality. I mean, this is what people call talking out of both, or shitting out of both sides of your mouth, and it's not good enough. Politicians are very adept at lying, pandering, but Zionism really broke that mold in terms of what people will accept and what they won't.
Now, operating through Hindu nationalist principles, and I'm deeply critical of it. And I'm critical of that when it happens everywhere.
Do
Yeah.
you believe that Israel is an apartheid state then?
I think that it is. Yeah, I think that they're not treating people fairly. That they're treating people unequally. I do believe that, and I'm critical of that. But yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's just listen to it one more time, because if you notice, Hassan also asked her about her BDS stance, which she said she opposes BDS. So let's just rewind it back again and
Criminalizing it
let's give her another shot.
and preventing the ongoing Holocaust from ever happening again. Do you agree with the dozens of human rights organizations, including Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, that Israel has committed a genocide?
I do. Yes.
Okay.
Said that.
In your 2020 DFI-LA questionnaire, you said you don't support boycott, divestments, and sanctions, BDS, and that you support Israel's right to exist. Has your stance changed since then? And do you believe Israel has a right to exist in its current form as an ethno-state that's currently being investigated for genocide at the International Court of Justice?
You see, Hassan tried so hard to tell her, do you believe that in its current form, in its current apartheid form, that it has a right to exist? Do you believe apartheid has a right to exist? And the first words out of her mouth is, I do. I do believe it has a right to exist. And then throw lip service to, well, but there should be equality, like in theory, because I'm such a good person and I'm running for election and I want your little minions in the chat to vote for me. So I'm going to pay lip service. But yes, I oppose BDS, as you just said, and I don't believe in the one-state solution. Okay. Thank you, Zionist. Thank you very much.
Yes, I do believe that Israel has a right to exist. I want to see countries that are operating without apartheid, with equality in their borders. I come from a country, from India, which is, now operating through Hindu nationalist principles, and I'm deeply critical of it. And I'm critical of that when it happens everywhere.
Do you believe that Israel is an apartheid state then?
I think that it is. Yeah, I think that they're not treating people fairly. That they're treating people unequally. I do believe that, and I'm critical of that. But yeah.
Okay. In February 2024, the SALA censured you for.
Okay. So, I mean, Hassan was very professional, all of that. And this is, I believe this is someone he, pays to clip his streams and everything. And even they were saying, Hassan asked Nithya Raman if she thinks Israel has a right to exist, and she says yes. Ooh. And I also read that apparently, so disappointed but not surprised. Oh, okay. And apparently Hassan switched the chat to emojis only. So I think the response, because of the response from the chat, was not happy. And yeah, I think more broadly, I mean, because some people will say, well, this is just a mayoral race, who cares? The mayor of Los Angeles doesn't have a lot to do with whatever foreign policy is, what they'll say, which is absolutely not true. There's Israeli bonds that tons of cities in the US are invested in. Israeli companies, weapons manufacturers, all of these things, it's all everything is connected. And I was glad to see that there's a lot of pushback to that. But looking more broadly, right, in terms of litmus tests and thinking about that, there was an interview that Hassan gave to Politico, and he sort of talked about who his potential candidates, which candidates he would like to see running for president, and who he would support. And that also drew some backlash, specifically because of this litmus test that we've been talking about. So let's review what he said. So the article is from March 28th, and it's the title is "Why Some Democrats Want to Shut Off Hassan Piker's Megaphone." So here's his dream nominees. Going down. Going down. Pa-pa-pam. Here we go. So who does Piker like for 2028? He's got a short list. I said Georgia Senator Jon Ossoff will be my dark horse pick, depending on how he presents himself, if he has ambitions for higher office. I do love UAW President Sean Fain personally. I like an outsider pick. I like Ro Khanna. I like AOC. I actually like Senator Chris Van Hollen quite a bit as well, even. And the criticism cuts both ways. At the end of the day, of course, I have disagreements with every single one of these candidates, Piker said. No candidate is perfect. Now, in terms of Jon Ossoff, it's very I'm really not sure why he brought him up specifically. Because Jon Ossoff is someone who has taken tons of money from J Street. That's a nice little chunk of money. I haven't heard one leftist bring up Jon Ossoff to say like, oh my God, that's my guy. You know, like a J Street Zionist, is that really who your dark horse pick will be? It shows, I think, not a detachment. What's the word I'm looking for? Like a certain, like, what do you, an out of touchness is what I will call it, of where I think Democratic voters and base voters, progressives in general, where their litmus test is not who voted for a resolution Bernie Sanders introduced and which was shot down because it was a performative vote anyway, and it didn't get passed, about halting some offensive weapons and canceling those out. People aren't looking for J Street Zionists to come back to the Democrat. If the Democratic Party wants to win, right, which is all they care about, right? That's the language that they speak. What is it going to take us to win? What is it going to take us to win? Well, they lost tons of people who stayed home in 2024 and who previously voted Democrat because those people were disgusted with the genocide. And more than that, a lot of people, like the clip like a clip I played earlier in another stream, feel like voting for Biden was such a mistake because they watched a genocide happen under him and they felt guilty about that. Do you think a J Street Zionist is someone who's going to be able to appeal to their concerns? Is someone who's going to speak to their concerns? Is going to be good enough? Good enough doesn't win. At least when you're talking about Zionism. Zionism is the litmus test, which is why I'm trying to, not that anyone who works in the Democratic Party will see this, and I would never work in the Democratic Party even if they offered me $1 billion, because I don't think they are reformable. Personally, I don't think they're reformable. But I'm also upfront about the fact that if there's an explicitly anti-Zionist candidate, they could get my vote. Rashida Tlaib, for example, will get my vote. Right now, she's the only anti-Zionist elected member of Congress. But someone who, like Jon Ossoff, who might say, yes, Gaza is going through a genocide, and also takes money from J Street, and believes in a two-state solution, never gonna get my vote. I wouldn't even spit in John Ossoff's direction. I'm really not sure why Hassan even brought him up. Like, like, is it because he's hot? Like, or conventionally attractive or whatever? Like, I don't know. I don't know what motivated Hassan to sort of name him. Out of all people he could have named. And Hassan also mentioned Ro Khanna, who, my God, I mean, let's see Ro Khanna's position on Zionism. Okay, Ro Khanna, Dem critic of Israel, says he backs Zionism and Israel's right to exist. This wasn't before the genocide. This is from October 2025. 2 years into the genocide. He still backs Zionism. Khanna has faced criticism for saying Israel committed genocide in Gaza, appearing alongside defendant, blah, blah, blah. You see, so here's a psycho who thinks he can have it both ways. I really believe Ro Khanna is a psychopath. I truly do. I mean, he really, lying comes too naturally for him, even on politician standards. But at least he's not lying about supporting Zionism, makes it very, very clear where he stands. Okay, fuck you. Fuck you, you piece of shit. Ro Khanna also, so why would Hassan bring him up as a presidential candidate? Really, if you're trying to get these people to be electable, Mr. Piker, who I very much admire. I mean, when I reviewed Hassan's debate with Ethan Klein, I thought Hassan made brilliant points about the one-state solution, which is why I think someone in Hassan's position with millions of viewers, access to millions of people, and access to all of these politicians who Ro Khanna has been on his stream, if you want to make them actually earn some votes or be able to attract some votes, you have to. Liberal Zionism will not be enough for people. I'm literally, I don't know if I'm trying to help them, because I mean, if let's say Ro Khanna comes out as an anti-Zionist, I still would not believe him, but that would be a more electable position than also being, he's endorsed by J Street PAC for this election cycle. This election cycle, right? J Street also, so this is from the J Street PAC website showing how they're endorsing Ro. Con man, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a good like nickname for Ro Khanna that would sort of speak to how he's such a bullshitter. So if anyone has any ideas, please let me know. Blah 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 blah. Sorry, nothing. I'm not reading anything interesting here. It's not worth even going over. Just know that Ro Khanna is endorsed by J Street PAC. What is J Street? Diet APAC or APAC Light, whatever you want to call it. And I think, so a lot of people are trying to say APAC bad, but J Street, that's fine. And I want you to know that maybe, let's say, if you think voters should not have a litmus test, or that litmus test shouldn't be Zionism, you should know that J Street does have a litmus test for which candidates they support financially, and in every other area, campaign-wise. And they do have a litmus test. And their litmus test is Zionism. They do not endorse anti-Zionists. How do I know that? Because J Street in 2018 withdrew its endorsement of Rashida Tlaib. And why did they unendorse Rashida Tlaib? After closely consulting with Rashida Tlaib's campaign to clarify her most recent views on various aspects, we have come to the unfortunate conclusion that divergence of perspective requires J Street PAC to withdraw our endorsement of her candidacy. J Street PAC was created, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Here we go. Oh, sorry about that. We cannot endorse candidates who conclude that they can no longer publicly express unequivocal support for a two-state solution and other core principles to which our organization is dedicated. And you can see from their tweet here, this was in response to Rashida Tlaib supporting the one-state solution, right? Statement. J Street will not endorse candidates who do not endorse a two-state solution. So anytime you see a politician like John Ossoff, like A.O. Flippity Flop, I believe they've endorsed Bernard Sanders, Ro Conman, work in progress on the nickname, any candidate who's endorsed by J Street has to first commit to J Street that they are Zionist, who support the two-state solution. Supporting the one-state solution gets you unendorsed by J Street. Very important. So they have a litmus test, which means that we as voters have a right to have a litmus test of our own. My litmus test is Zionism, except that unlike J Street, I'm on the opposite side of that. You have to be anti-Zionist to get my vote. And if you don't want my vote, that's your right. You know, and it's also so gross that they came out with like a whole ass fucking statement against, like, you know, like to explain. I mean, I guess it's helpful for us to look at it now, to know that, oh, anyone that gets their quote unquote endorsement, not quote unquote, like just their pathetic little bitch endorsement, has to be first a Zionist. We can look at their statement that they shared, although I mean, reading it too much might give me a migraine. We cannot endorse candidates who conclude they can no longer publicly express unequivocal support for a two-state solution, blah, blah, blah. Rashida Tlaib's election as the first Palestinian-American woman member of Congress will be historical. Oh, look at them. They're giving her, you know, they're giving her props at the very, after unendorsing her. Okay, fuck you, J Street. Fuck you. Rot in hell. You see, this is why when it comes to the Zionist lobby, you can't just only focus on AIPAC. Liberal Zionism is Zionism. For example, there's another one, another piece of shit who I'm going to talk about that I believe, I'm not sure if Hassan endorsed him, to be honest, but Mayor Mamdani has, to my disappointment personally, because Mayor Mamdani ran on an anti-Zionist position, right? Equal rights from the river to the sea. But this fucking loser, Brad Lander, calls himself to this day a liberal Zionist. And this article posits the question, can a liberal Zionist recreate Mamdani's coalition? Brad Lander's primary challenge to Representative Dan Goldman, who, to be clear, is a very, very also a Zionist, right? It's two Zionists, you know, fighting it out. We'll test whether the progressive alliance that came together in 2025 can win again. And Jewish Currents, of course, is trying to pretend that, yes, Brad Lander has a chance. Liberal Zionism is good enough. Let's see here. Okay. It may also help, some progressive leaders say, that Lander's views on Israel and Palestine tend to diverge sharply from Goldman's, not on Zionism. Joe Dinkin, the National Deputy Director of the Working Families Party, Democratic Party outfit, Lander's longtime political home, which has endorsed him in the race, called Lander a clear voice against genocide and occupation, adding, that's a stark difference from Dan Goldman, and is the kind of progressive Jewish leadership we deserve in Congress. Liberal Zionism. You see, all of these strategists, they really truly believe they can triangulate people's commitment to Palestine, voters' commitment to Palestine, by placating voters by saying, okay, our candidates are going to use the word genocide to describe what's happening in Gaza. And they're still going to be liberal Zionists. And they think that that's good enough because the alternative is Dan Goldman. And what I'm trying to explain is that pro-Palestine voters, at least if they're like me, which maybe they're not, are gonna choose to stay home over voting for a liberal Zionist instead of someone who is an even less someone like Dan Goldman, who's unapologetically Zionist. I think people would rather stay home. This is a distinction without a difference. Two Zionists fighting it out. And you might think it's enough because Brad Lander said genocide. Good luck with that. I mean, I guess we're gonna find out. So Brad Lander is running. Let's see more of Brad Lander Zionism, just so we can get a sense of how Zionisty he is. I believe Emma Vigeland, who is a journalist on the Majority Report, she has endorsed Brad Lander, which is very not surprising, but disappointing, because at the end of the day, you as a journalist in the media, you can push him, Brad Lander, who you know personally and take photo ops with, you can push him to adopt an anti-Zionist position like Mayor Mamdani's. You can help him be more electable. Instead, you're choosing to say, okay, so he wants to be a Zionist, I'll endorse him anyway. You're not helping him. You're not helping him as a candidate. I mean, look at this shit. Look at this shit. So here he goes after a bookstore for, I'm trying to remember what happened here. This is utterly outrageous. Powerhouse Books. Oh, so I guess they had like, I think it's a bookstore that said something to the effect of, we don't let Zionists be speakers in our bookstore, whatever, which is their right. I mean, Zionism is not a religion. Zionism is an ideology, a genocidal ideology. It's not a religion. It's not an ethnicity. Zionism is a choice, right? You've allowed this Zionist, i.e. me, on your premises many times to buy books, but now you won't let us speak there? You see, he's like talking like in group terms, like, what of us Zionists, we deserve rights. Like, and this, when was it? 2024, summer of 2024. When Zionism was committing genocide, Brad Lander was going after a bookstore for not letting Zionists speak there. This is what he was using his public platform for. My God. He told us he's a Zionist, but he was really showing it. There's more. There's more from Brad. Oh, my blood pressure. It's not good. Oh, God. Okay. Infuriating to see Miriam Park-Slope, one of my absolute favorites, vandalized again overnight with anti-Semitic graffiti. Miriam serves and welcomes everyone, regardless of religion or politics, and doesn't bring either into the restaurant. So a restaurant was attacked, and he called it anti-Semitic. Vandalizing this restaurant because they serve Israeli food and their owner is a Jewish Israeli New Yorker is a clear example when anti-Zionism becomes anti-Semitism. Okay, this is dangerous, what he's doing here. He is conflating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, because look at the picture. Look at this shit. What does it say? What does the graffiti say? Genocide cuisine. Israel steals culture. You know what this is not? This is not anti-Semitism. This is not anti-Semitism. And I think Brad knows that. Instead, what is he doing? He's conflating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. Why is he doing that? Because he's a Zionist. He told us he's a Zionist. Do you think he's going to be better on Palestine after he's elected? Do you think he's not going to vote for a resolution that conflates anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism when he's already doing it now, before he's elected? Oh, but he supports the Block the Bombs Act, which halts certain offensive weapons and not other offensive weapons. You want to beat Zionism with liberal Zionism? Be my guest. Not worth a vote. Not worth a vote. My personal opinion, liberal Zionists can go, they will, if there is a hell, which I really hope there is. All liberal Zionists are going there. They will be first in line. Because, the thing about right-wing Zionists is that they are less hypocritical than liberal Zionists. Liberal Zionists like to pretend that they are less genocidal, but really they're genocidal with a different style. Okay, it's like genocidal in a different font, basically. Jesus Christ. Here's the last thing from Brad that I'm going to share. Because, as Maya Angelou said, when people tell you who they are, believe them. So the New York Post, Zionist rag, posted this. New York City Comptroller Brad Lander accused of divesting pension funds from Israel. And look what he came here to say. This headline is false. I oppose and have always opposed divestment from Israel. Our pension funds are invested in many Israeli-owned companies. Oh, I forgot to mention, Brad Lander is also anti-BDS. But he's liberal. He's a liberal Zionist, you see. Progressives should not be endorsing this sack of shit. Leftists should not be endorsing, and really the only people who I see endorsing him, I mean, his campaign is not getting traction, in my opinion, right? Which is really based on, my opinion is only based on my own lived experience, vibes I'm getting, whatever. I don't think he's going to win the primary. And I'm not going to be sad. Because if you wanted to win the primary, at least meet voters where they are, which is anti-Zionism. I don't care how emotionally invested in apartheid he is because of his childhood, because of his upbringing, because of his blah, 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 blah. No. He's smart enough to know what Zionism is, and he still identifies as that. Fuck you, Brad. Fuck you. Hope you lose. I really do. I hope to be clear, I hope Dan Goldman loses too. But like, this is what I'm trying to get through the Democrats, although there's no getting through the liberals. This is not going to win them any votes, or votes that they need to actually primary out a sitting Congress member when Congress has a 95% re-election rate. Okay? Once you get in a seat, it's almost impossible to primary you out of it. It's very, very difficult. It's like a seat for life, really, if you play your cards right. Shameful. And I can't believe that even when voters are making it so clear that they're looking for anti-Zionist candidates, politicians and candidates, not even politicians, are still trying to triangulate that into saying, well, I'll just throw more platitudes on Palestine while still being a Zionist. Good luck. Actually, I wish you the worst luck. But like, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. I'm very certain. And hey, if he wins the primary, I'll eat against Dan Goldman. I'll eat my words. He'll still be a Zionist. Not going to get my support. Not that he's asking. No one's asking for my endorsement. Although at the end of this stream, let's see how much time we have. We have a little bit left. At the end of this stream, I will share with you a candidate that I do support, because I want to prove that I'm not just a nitty-picky negative Nancy. I feel bad for Nancy's because of this saying of negative Nancy. I want to prove to you that I'm not really, and I'm not anti-electoral, at least not yet. My litmus test is Zionism, and very few candidates are meeting it. But I'm not changing my litmus test. If J Street isn't changing their litmus test, why should I, right? Someone has to have a litmus test. I mean, God. We can't settle for crumbs, So, to go back to the Hassan point, because a lot of people are sort of giving him a lot of flack, which, I guess is their right. But I think to sort of try to explain where he's coming from, or his philosophy of electoralism is, I believe, which a lot of people share, it's not just him, it's that voting for the Democrats is voting for a lesser evil. And it might because voting doesn't take a lot of time. It's not, to him, voting for liberal Zionists or Zionists against Republicans who are, in some cases, worse Zionists, to him, that makes sense. Voting for a lesser evil makes sense. And he explained that in an interview he did with the Pod Save Bros. So let's hear what he had to say, and sort of explaining his worldview when it comes to electoral politics, and whether, I think the specific question that he was answering is whether, let's say if Gavin Newsom runs and wins the Democratic Party nomination, God forbid, whether Hassan Piker came out and said that he would vote third party if that were the choice. Which, that's how a lot of people feel. So kudos to him for voicing that. And we're 2 years out of a primary too. So there's really nothing. That's something that honestly is very like milquetoast to say, because Gavin Newsom is shit on everything, like on housing policy, on homelessness, on CalCare, he vetoed universal healthcare for California multiple years in a row after running on promising to sign it. He's a shit and he's a proud Zionist, Gavin Newsom. So Hassan came out and said, if Gavin Newsom is the nominee, I'm voting third party. And honestly, when he said it at the time, I was like, I think Hassan is just playing politics here, which is smart, right? You want Democrats to sort of see you as serious. But he sort of walked it back a little bit here, which I wish he didn't. But let's see let's see exactly what he said.
You said you wouldn't vote for Gavin Newsom against JD Vance in 2028.
Yeah,
and you vote third party.
I mean, I don't even think that's going to be a problem.
Well, but like a lot of.
So what he means here by it's not going to be a problem is that Gavin Newsom is not going to win the nomination, which I think is very likely that he won't win the nomination, of course. Because who's enthused about Gavin fucking Newsom? No one I know. Maybe Kimberly Guilfoyle, that Trump person, or that person. Is she married to Trump Jr.? I can't remember. Anyway, she was married to Gavin Newsom, that lady. She might be enthused, or might not, actually, because it's her ex-husband. But
people, including people who share a lot of your critiques of the Democratic Party, hear that and think like this is the problem. When the stakes are concrete, like a Vance presidency, another 4 years of what we're living through. The people who say they're building a movement would, like rather preserve their own power than do what winning requires, and
what is this liberal bullshit? Blaming voters for candidates being unappealing, disgusting, repulsive, bad on issues is crazy. And it's really only Democrats who do this. I have not seen Republicans beating their own base. Not that Republicans are good in any way. Republicans suck in every way imaginable. Gross. But saying that the problem is not a shit candidate like Gavin Newsom, but voters who wouldn't vote for him. He's John, like, what's his face? What's his name? John? I believe it's John, because he's just like a regular white dude. It's either John or Ryan. So he's already blaming voters preemptively for not voting for Gavin Newsom. Good luck. Like, you see, Democrats are preparing to lose in every way.
Hold your nose and vote for what you believe would be the lesser of two evils. Like, how do you respond to that?
I want the Democratic Party to treat me like a never Trumper. I want the Democratic Party to treat me like a triple Trump voter, okay? Because it turns out that's all they're tuned into. So if what it takes for the Democrats to turn around and be like, wait a minute, we're losing this guy, we have to win him over again or whatever, instead of just like taking my vote for granted as they've done so over and over again for the left flank, and then, I'm going to say things that may or may not end up being true, but it doesn't matter. We're so far out from the election anyway that it's like, I'm just saying, look, now is your opportunity to find a good candidate instead.
But you see, as we head into these, that
just want to say, very well said on Hassan's part, right? Like, he's basically admitting to the white bro here. God, what is his name? It's going to drive me crazy. I don't want to Google it because I don't care enough. to find out, but it's one of those itches. I want to say his name is John, just because it's like a standard white name. But he's telling him that the Democrats have taken left voters for granted over and over and over again. And he's literally admitting to him, I'm trying to get Democrats to take this argument, to treat left voters the way they're chasing Trump voters who will never, ever vote for them anyway. You know, the Democratic Party lost tons of voters over Palestine, specifically. And instead of appealing to them, they think they can literally trot out the same fucking bullshit argument of, well, but Kamala's better than Trump, so vote for Kamala, or you're the problem, blah, 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 blah. You're not going to win like that. You're not going to win like that. Gavin Newsom, if he somehow wins the Democratic nomination and runs against, God forbid, I mean, J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or any of these freaks, Gavin Newsom is not going to win. The left isn't going to be like, you know what? He hates homeless people. He voted down CalCare multiple times, universal healthcare in California multiple times. But I'm gonna get over it and get out there and vote. Like, the left is not doing that. So if anything, Hassan is telling them it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. Hassan might vote for Gavin Newsom at the end of the day and and say, it's a lesser evil, blah blah blah. But real people, they're not, or people who left the Democratic Party over Palestine, they're not going to be like, they didn't buy it in any other election, that lesser evil excuse. So Democrats aren't even trying to come up with new talking points to justify voting for liberal Zionists. They're already trotting out the same losing argument of, they're better than the alternative, so what's your problem?
Like, after what we've lived through these last years, the stakes and the stark difference between even a Democrat who you and I might find.
Look at this condescension. Like that's why I think rich people are not getting voters. Like, this is the barrier. They're so disconnected from real people. They really think this, but Trump worse, but Trump worse. It didn't work. Like, what is it going to take for you to reevaluate your strategy and say, okay, we lost people over Palestine. We need to reassess the Trump worse. What is it going to take for, I'm going to call him John because it's more convenient. What is it going to take for liberals like John to get the fact, because he considers himself a strategist or a speechwriter, whatever he considers himself to be, a smart Democratic operative. What is it going to take for him to actually understand what voters want? Because he's not meeting them. It didn't work for Kamala. How many more times are Democrats going to have to lose before they actually reassess? I mean, it's a genuine question on my part. I don't know.
Not up to par, to say the least, versus Vance or whoever the fuck they put up.
Of course. I mean, I hate Republicans. I oppose them. I say that all the time. I think that the Republicans are far more damaging. The biggest terrorists, the biggest domestic terrorists in this country, the biggest terrorist internationally is the Republican Party. And not only that, but it's just I want to fight against the growing fascist movement in this country. My frustration with the Democrats is their conciliatory attitude towards that and their lack of investment in this struggle. This idea that, on the one hand, you say Donald Trump's a dangerous force. I see that. I recognize that. But then you turn around and you take on his anti-immigrant narratives and anti-immigrant messaging from the 2020 election that you won and decide you're going to be the sincere candidate that ends up, dealing with the growth of migration in this country. It's a failure. If you were serious about being an anti-fascist, if you were serious about combating these forces, you would take it more seriously.
Yeah, and that's the point, right? That Democrats have been so comfortable taking the left for granted. I mean, they genuinely believed that they were going to win the 2024 election because Kamala was stylistically in their minds, even though she's she was like, I want the most lethal military in the world. And, she didn't support an arms embargo, but they were like, but pro-Palestine voters are still going to vote for her. No, they didn't. They stayed home. So didn't work. You tried it. I want to share this. When the war criminal of the Zionist state came to Congress to give a speech or whatever, Congressmember Tlaib, my president, Rashida Tlaib, brought along Hani Al-Madoun. And this is his story, right? Joining me in the chamber today is Hani Al-Madoun, who has lost over 150 members of his extended family in the Zionist state's genocide. After witnessing his sister forced to eat animal feed, he and his family were determined to start a soup kitchen to feed their starving neighbors. Do you think Hani is going to vote for Gavin Newsom because Gavin Newsom is hypothetically, theoretically, not as bad as the standard Republican? Gavin Newsom, who, went after homeless people, criminalized homelessness, Zionist proud Zionist to this day. Do you think Hani is gonna be like, but he's not as evil as the Republicans, so I'm gonna leave my house and vote for a Democrat again? 150 family members he lost under Biden, not under Republicans. This is when Biden had the presidency. The genocide started under Democrats. So this idea that Republicans are more aggressive militarily in foreign policy and kill more people, it's all true. But for people who suffered through the genocide under Democrats, you sound worse than out of touch. You sound insane for thinking that someone like Hani would vote for a Democrat again, who is just a Zionist, but less of a, but they want to make the concentration camp in Gaza a little bit nicer. They want to make the concentration camp in the West Bank just maybe have a little bit more food. Zionism is the litmus test, at least for me, and I know for many voters. And if a candidate commits to being anti-Zionist, like Congressmember Rashida Tlaib, and support the one-state solution, great, they would get my support. But so far, most of them, anyone but Rashida, all of them are trying to triangulate Palestinian rights into a message that they think will be just not meet people right down the middle. What they think the middle is, which is to pay lip service to Palestinian rights while still being Zionists. They think that's going to be good enough to win back voters like Hani. My empathy test is thinking, if I had family in Gaza who I lost because of the Democrats' because of the genocide that started under Democrats, what would it take for me to vote for another Democrat again? It wouldn't be Gavin Newsom. It wouldn't be Kamala Harris. It wouldn't be Pete fucking Buttigieg. Although I'm not that worried about Pete because Pete is so unlikable. I don't actually worry about him winning any votes. Like, genuinely speaking, there isn't enough money in the world to make him likable. And I'm gay, so it's like, if he can't pull that with me, I mean, I don't know. Tough shit. So I'm not worried about Pete. But what kind of a Democrat is it going to take for me to consider voting for them? Because I'm not voting for any Democrat who is a Zionist, liberal Zionist or not. Zionism is the litmus test, as we saw with the interview with Hassan and that lady running for LA mayor. I mean, I think politicians are not getting it. They're not getting it. And the people making money in the Democratic Party out of dishing out advice to candidates, they're not getting it either. They really think they just need to find the right platitude and the pro-Palestine movement will get on board. As long as you say the word genocide while still being a Zionist, they think that's going to work. Yeah. So my test is putting myself in, this is what empathy is, right? Like putting myself in Hani's shoes. If I'm Hani and I lost 150 family members because of this genocide, would I vote for this candidate? That's my test. And right now, the only person who meets that test is Congressmember Rashida Tlaib. If she ran for president, even as a Democrat, I would swallow my hatred for Democrats and I would vote for her. I would make the effort on election day to vote for her. So the last thing I had for you guys, and thank you for hanging out with me. I so appreciate you guys. Actually, I had one more thing I should show. So this is the danger, right? With voting for candidates who say they are good enough, even though they're Zionists. To vote for candidates like John Fetterman, for example, this was the argument that people in progressive media were using to say, well, he supports Israel, but he's not as bad on Israel as the Republicans. And look what, and we all know how that turned out, right? John Fetterman, as soon as he was elected, he became psychotic, a psychotic Zionist, wrapping himself up in the Zionist flag, like all that shit. But listen, this is how Hassan was talking about when it was still primary season. You can see from the hair. I love his hair. It's such a beautiful hair. But this was, I think, a mistake on Hassan's part. And I'm saying it as a call in and not a call out. Again, with the most respect and admiration. I think this is where, as voters, we went wrong. And voting for people, despite telling us that they're Zionists, under the pretense that maybe they'll be a little bit better than the Republicans. So this is what Hassan said back when John Fetterman was running in the primary.
She's rolling him pro-Israel, pro-police progressive. Brother, be real for a fucking moment. You're out of your mind. Like, I don't like that either, for the record. I don't like John Fetterman's, there are a couple things that I don't like about John Fetterman. You basically described them. But like, if you're going to fucking follow the ins and outs of electoral politics, how the fuck are you going to shit on John Fetterman? You're in the shit just like we are. She's rolling him pro-Israel.
So I'll play it again. Sorry, it was a little bit sped up. So I just lowered the speed and let's hear him out. Let's hear him out.
She's rolling him pro-Israel, pro-police progressive. Brother, be real for a fucking moment.
Okay, so a commenter said he's a pro-Israel, pro-police progressive, John Fetterman, as a reason why he should not be earning leftist support. John Fetterman, right? And this was in 2022.
Moment. You're out of your mind. Like, I don't like that either, for the record. I don't like John Fetterman's, there are a couple things that I don't like about John Fetterman. You basically described them. But like, if you're going to fucking follow the ins and outs of electoral politics, how the fuck are you going to shit on John Fetterman? You're in the shit just like we are. You know what I mean? This is what you're going to get in Pennsylvania, especially. What are you expecting? He's super pro-labor. He's a pro-Medicare for all. He's been a big Bernie supporter since the jump. And this interviewer is not fucking running around and being like, well, that means nothing, literal nothing. Okay, well, again, I am a political commentator. I'm gonna talk a little bit about marginal change every now and then. And I will go so far as to say that more John Fetterman's ultimately is a good thing. Straight up. John Fetterman is a good candidate. If the Democratic Party was comprised of more John Fettermans, the Democratic Party would unironically be significantly closer to pushing for socializing key aspects of American existence, 100%. What I'm simply stating is, I mean, leftists need to stop looking at a gift horse in the mouth, okay? But leftists, of course, have this painful inability not to apply the most vicious and bad faith critique to people that are on their side. She's rolling him pro-Israel, pro-police progressive. Brother.
Hey, don't call... Hey, let's be nice, okay? Like, we're all lefties here. I mean, this was the optimistic case that Hassan was making, right? Like that John Fetterman would be better than whatever Republican is going to be voted in. So why not vote for a lesser evil? And that's to be clear, this is Hassan is totally entitled to that philosophy. I just disagree on that point because we see what happened to someone like John Fetterman just 4 days ago when the Senate had a war powers resolution. They voted on whether to limit Trump and sort of to reject Trump's war on Iran. They introduced a war powers resolution, but introduced by a Democratic senator, Jeff Merkley. and it failed 50-49, okay, by one vote. Guess who that one vote again? And even Republicans like Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Rand Paul voted with Democrats in support, while Democratic Senator John Fetterman opposed it. So because of John Fetterman, that resolution against war in Iran failed. Now, to be clear, I'm not giving brownie points to who are the Republicans, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Rand Paul. They're all pieces of shit. Not giving them brownie points. And also, I'm pretty sure, because they whipped the votes in advance, I'm pretty sure they knew that John Fetterman was gonna be the asshole who votes no. So they knew they couldn't vote yes and maybe look good. Maybe it makes their record good. Susan Collins is running for re-election, so she needs to look like an anti-war hero before election season. So this is all coordinated, right? Not giving them any brownie points. But John Fetterman did not end up moving the Democrats closer to anything. He became worse after he was elected, which is what, unfortunately, and I wish this wasn't the case, this is what happens with candidates. They move to the right as soon as they're elected. Except Rashida Tlaib, my president, Rashida Tlaib. And I wish Hassan would sort of reevaluate this strategy of not having litmus tests for Democrats or not having the litmus test be Zionism. Because let's say if we said at the time, sorry, until John Fetterman comes out as anti-Zionist and endorses the one-state solution, he's not getting our vote, and then he would have lost the primary, then that would have encouraged candidates to be better on anti-Zionism and see that as a litmus test. Because not having any litmus test did not produce meaningful change or any kind of change for the better. So the last thing I had for all of us is a candidate that I do support who's running as a Democrat. I know, very controversial, but I'm going to share why I support her. She's anti-Zionist. Her name is Aber Kawas, and she said, "I'm running to be the first Palestinian Muslim woman elected in New York State. That's what's making the right wing very angry. Before you hear their Islamophobic bad faith attacks against me, know the facts." So let's listen.
I'm Abir, candidate for State Senate in District 12, and our campaign is gaining steam. But as a Palestinian Muslim woman running for office, our momentum is going to bring some pretty ugly attacks. One that the right is already obsessed with, an absurd claim that I held the Hamas flag at a protest a decade ago. It's BS.
Man, they got nothing, huh? I mean, their attacks are so pathetic. Jesus Christ. Like the Zionist lobby. I mean, my God.
It was actually a scarf printed with the Shahada, a common religious symbol, like the cross or Star of David, and it's everywhere. It's a statement of faith, and standing up for justice has always been part of my faith. This is the same thing that right-wing forces and big money interests try to do to Mayor Mamdani. But the truth is, my organizing has always been rooted in peace, justice, and solidarity with the oppressed everywhere, and always nonviolent. Maybe that's what really scares them. So before you hear the nasty lies and hate that they're going to be throwing at me, know the facts. And know that their insane, racist fever dream won't stop me from fighting for our community here in Queens. That means peace, by the way. Just ask Elmo.
Oh, wait, that was that. What was that? Was that a giraffe? Oh, that's so cute. Oh my God. And they're wearing the Palestinian scarf. Yeah. So cool. So she's running for state senate in New York. She's an anti-Zionist. So she passes neoliberal Tears' litmus test, which I'm sure she's thrilled about. No one's ever heard of me. And that's a good thing. And there's the founder of Within Our Lifetime, which is a Palestinian human rights-led organization in New York. I outsource a lot of my basically thoughts on politics to Nardine because she's brilliant. And here's what she said. Aber has been a known Palestinian community organizer for over a decade. when someone with that kind of long-standing work is being heavily attacked by Zionists, it's worth showing up in defense of them, regardless of what you think of electoral politics. And I agree with Nardine. And I think that this, even though Aber, you didn't hear her mention anything about the Democratic Party or Democrats in general. And I think, but because she's anti-Zionist, I think she is the kind of candidates people are looking for. So it's not that people are flat out saying, I'll never vote for Democrats ever again, although some are saying that, and they're right to say that. I think what people are really saying is, what kind of a candidate, a Democratic candidate, would we consider showing up for on election day? And the test, because of the genocide in Gaza, I think it's become harder for candidates to get away with liberal Zionism. But someone like Aber, I think, deserves support. So I would vote for her. I don't live in New York, but if I did, I would vote for her. So I support her, just to prove to anyone who thinks I might be a negative Nancy, who just hates electoralism because I'm a pesky little person. Nope, there are candidates I would support. And it's the Democratic Party, if they were smart, they would run more candidates like Aber, who has experience as a community organizer for over a decade, right? A Palestinian American, and they would look for more of these kinds of candidates instead of fucking Ro Khanna or whatever other Zionist, throws money on elections and tries to be president or whatever. So that's my free advice to Democrats who are never going to listen to this. Get anti-Zionist candidates and maybe we'll talk. Thank you for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. If you have any ideas for clips I should react to that have to do with Palestine or the one-state solution, please leave a comment and a link, and I would be so happy to react to it together. So thank you for joining me. And as always, from the river to the sea. See you tomorrow.